In 1959, at Street's Grocery in Whitefish, Montana's special spice was born. Alpine Touch. It's the taste you grew up with, well seasoned through the test of time. As the tradition carries from one Montana generation to the next. From its humble beginnings to a trusted brand, here's to the next 60 years. Alpine Touch. Montana's special spice since 1959.
Good. Well, I hope everyone's doing well. Ready to go? Yeah. Okay. Well, big win for us Friday night. Weber State has been the standard the last several years in this conference, and for us to go on the road on a short week, there were several things maybe working against us. They had a bye, we had weather, all that stuff, but I think our guys knew that none of that stuff could get in our way. We got our preparation in during the week, and while it wasn't perfect by any means on Friday night, our guys trusted each other and found a way to close it out in the end. So can be more pleased to get one more win, and we're past the halfway point now, and I think we're sitting where we want to, but we have a lot left in front of us in the beginning with Idaho State this Saturday. So with that, I'll open up for questions.
You had two players get tabbed as Player of the Week, Glessner and obviously Daniel Hardy. Can you just talk on each of their performances this past week and just how much they mean to this team?
Yeah, I think in both cases, probably opportunities prior to this week where they could have been awarded that honor. Daniel has been very consistent with his efforts, and that's where it starts for him. He's all out effort every play, and he'd be the first one to say it's not just about him up front. So really unselfish, but he's put himself in position with his hard work in the off season to really become a force. And he has, to me, in every game he's been that way. It just so happened his numbers, and those opportunities shot up a little bit on Friday night. And if he doesn't make some of his plays, well, maybe on the other side. And in Blake's case, we've talked about Blake and rising the occasion with the opportunity that presented itself for him in fall camp, and he's been very consistent as well. Not only with his place kicks, but also kicking the ball off. His ball placement in that game with their dangerous return game was really important, and he got a tackle as well, in addition to the two field goals that he made. So, pleased that they both garnered those honors, and like I said, I think it was something that was probably a few weeks coming for both of them.
Maybe kind of expanding on Glessner just a little bit. He's kind of came into this role as a freshman and hasn't skipped a beat. If you could just maybe expand on how the impact he has on this team at so young in his career.
Yeah, I think going back to spring and talking with BJ Robertson at the time about Blake's potential, I think in Blake, BJ saw a lot of ability, a guy that was probably a kicker after being a safety and a receiver and all the other things in high school. So his ability to potentially take off as a kicker was in front of him. And I think that's part of Blake's makeup is that, growing up, he played a lot of positions, was a really good soccer player as well. So it's, he's a competitor, and I think he's confident, believes himself, and technically he's just getting better and better. So, and, the opportunity I think wasn't too big for him when it was, when it ended up being his. And, that goes all the way back to that Wyoming game when he, jumped in and made the go-ahead field goal in the fourth quarter that was 50-plus. So, and he owns, he hasn't been perfect, and he owns his mistakes and those type of things. And I think just mindset-wise, he's, to say he's far beyond his years, I don't know. That's maybe where I see him right now, and maybe that's part of just his development as a football player, not just a kicker, I guess.
Is Daniel really starting to get those details, the technicalities of the position ironed out at defensive end?
I suppose so. He wouldn't have been perfect in that game, but he shows up certainly in the pass rush side of things. But I think where he's become better and better is defending the run. Being gap sound, trusting his teammates, that whole thing, and then to say he's perfected his pass rush, I don't think that's the case, but he's becoming harder and harder to block each week. And, when we can get teams chasing sticks, chasing points, and turn him loose along with the other guys, that certainly is played in our favor, and hopefully to continue to do that.
Yeah, I think from our perspective, he was extremely difficult to block. But what is the next step for him if he still has improvements to make?
Well, I think it's it's fine tuning everything. He's improved against the run. He's made some big plays against the run. He's also found himself, out of his gap at times and those type of things. So it's eliminating those things. I know Daniel's he's critical of himself, and I'm certain each week, he's getting patted on the back, but the things that he's doing incorrectly are getting pointed out too. So, our whole D line understanding just how it all fits together, I think, is growing each week, and he's certainly a big part of that.
Coach, what stood out most from watching film from this past game?
Well, it was one of those games that probably wasn't this. A lot of times it looks different on the next day. This case was a Saturday as opposed to a Friday night. It probably looked like you thought it did a little bit. I think defensively, both sides really controlled it. I think the field positions wasn't in our favor the whole game. I thought special teams wise, we neutralized them pretty well. I think offensively, when you look at the stat sheet and you see that we were 1 for 14 on third down, and then you dig a little bit deeper. That's a collective first down, second down production, and then third down. We weren't in the greatest third down situations. We were backed up a lot. I think offensively, we didn't play real well. I didn't suspect that we did walking off the field. I knew we were able to, to mount the one drive to tie it up. Move the ball a little bit, both those opportunities we had with the turnovers to kick field goals, and ultimately we finished on the field at the end getting the first down, but plenty to clean up there. And certainly part of that equation, the credit goes to Weber State. I do feel like they're one of the better defenses in this conference, and they have been, and they will be, I think, when the dust settles at the end of the year, but plenty to clean up there. I think defensively, we bounced back from a really well-executed drive that they had to start the game. And, we're put in situations more times than not where they had the ball at midfield, essentially, and just were able to come up with, stop after stop. So, you take the good from what you see on both sides of the football, you take the bad, and you need to get better, and you need to point everything out. I think that's the biggest thing. You win a game like that, you can't just gloss over the things that didn't go your way, and I think we did that as we reviewed the film, and now we're on to the next opponent.
Early in the week, but what stands out to you offensively and defensively about
Well,
Idaho State?
I think you look at their record. That's one thing. You look at a couple of their games. I know they upset Davis a couple weeks ago. They played Sacramento State very close, and they've had a couple games that haven't gone their way. So they're very capable on both sides of football. They have big playability on offense. I think the one stat that it hasn't gone their way, they're -9 in the turnover margin, and we're +12. So there's no real secret to that. That's working really well for us and not for them. And I know in the Davis game, they were really on the plus side, and they were able to convert those takeaways into scores. So they're dangerous on both sides. I think both sides of football, you can see continued improvement. Now they've played better home than away, but we got to count on their best effort, and that's what we're preparing for this week.
What would you say are the biggest reason for somebody runs up the middle against Weber?
Well, I think you put on any of their games leading into our game, anybody that wanted to run sideways didn't have a lot of success. Whether that was Utah, JMU, Cal Davis, if you tried to get lateral, they've proved a couple times when we tried to get outside that those were pretty minimal gains. So the teams that have had success has been more at them, using motion, using your tight ends as it's not really misdirection, but it's a form of misdirection, trying to lose their eyes. And we just didn't have as much success as we had hoped for. And that there's a little bit of point of attack, finishing blocks at the second level. I don't think it was really Isaiah, Elijah. I don't think it was to their fault. They just didn't have a lot of great opportunities. I know they had a couple early. We had a couple perimeter blocking penalties, which, every one of those stacks up. I know that, but there was also probably a read or two where the ball should get outside with our quarterback that didn't happen. So it's not that all these calls are designated to go up the middle and we're just trying to beat our head against the wall. It's not that. It's just the way it played out. Credit to Weber. We have to get better in those situations. It was a conscious decision to think that Weber State had been very good against defending perimeter runs. I think more than anything, I think we look back and say we probably should have thrown the ball more. That's probably the bigger criticism, I suppose, than the amount of runs or how we ran the football, I guess.
Yeah, throwing the ball more. I mean, it wasn't super successful either. But there wasn't a thought of we need to limit passing. You did say.
I think you look at a team like Weber that's a man team primarily. I mean, a heavy man team. There's not just those easy gimme throws a whole lot. And we didn't challenge them downfield. That would probably be the biggest thing. We really didn't have a downfield opportunity until late in that game. We threw one to Willie, and that came up short. And we didn't have any times. There's probably a couple play calls where the ball could have found its way to Lance on the perimeter, but because they happened to play zone that particular play, it didn't happen. So, I think it's one of those games in a tight game when I know you're calling. I've been there. You're calling plays, and you don't want to be in 2nd and 10 because this team, defends the pass pretty well. And then on the flip side, when you run it and you're now in maybe 2nd and 8, that doesn't solve all your problems either. So, and then we got the lead, and I know you're conscious of protecting the football once that happens. Our defense was playing really well. Not that you absolutely know that 7 points was going to hold up, but there's a sense that it could. So I think there's a lot of factors that go into it, and it'll be a good learning experience for all involved. We got to play better. We probably, could have made some adjustments differently, but at the end of the day, we won it, and we can learn from it, and we need to learn from it.
How important is a guy like Lewis Kipt for your offensive line? A guy who's been here a while and kind of provides a statement presence there.
Yeah, Lewis is a real steadying force, and now he's been able to play that left tackle position. I think the position that he's probably most suited for. I know he's played inside a lot, been the guy that was kind of the fixer as far as where play where needed over the course of his career. But I really think he's coming to his own at that position. In addition to being a captain and a leader, he's a guy that from all I could tell, he's been there every day too. So incredibly durable. And we'll need him to continue to improve his play. I do think how he's played this first half of the season is a step up from what we saw in the spring. The spring was a step up from where he was in 19, and I think he's got potential down the road to keep playing football too. And I think for him to accomplish some of those goals, I think the last half of the season will be really important how he plays and how he continues to improve.
What about him makes him, you think, better suited for that left tackle spot?
Well, I just think he's a tackle. Tackle bodies are hard to come by. He's got the length. He's got the athleticism. He's quick-footed, and he's got to be more physical too at the same time. And all those things add up to being able to, I guess, accomplish all the things that we ask in that position. But it's primarily you start with the length and the athleticism that he does possess. And he's a really smart kid as well, and just been pleased with how he's played to this point. But I know he's striving for more too. That's what I really appreciate about Lewis.
He's one of the few guys who is kind of taking advantage of getting that extra year and getting more done academically. Who are getting their masters or getting an extra degree because of the COVID year.
Yeah, it's a short window in time. It's one of the few positives probably out of last year that guys, got an extra year of eligibility, and if it fit into their plans in the grand scheme of things to get another degree and play another year of football, fit what they're looking for. It's a great deal, and I know he was one clearly that was both objectives were really important, being able to enhance his education and then play more football. And I think a lot of times guys don't realize the real world's going to be out there. Enjoy being young while you can, and I know Lewis is one of those guys that certainly is doing that.
I think even Amandre said that he wished he would have done things differently if he knew he had gotten an extra year. So is that a little tricky, I guess, for some of those guys?
Yeah, I suppose. I know. Yeah, Andre's fall academically was different. And I think there was a lot of uncertainty of how it all would play out. And I think for our guys, when the fall was taken away, but they still thought there was going to be a spring. I don't know that they could really judge where their sense of fulfillment with their football career would be. I think that was really hard because I know we had some guys. I think it was 3 or 4 of them actually that were moving along like it was 4 of them that they were going to be super seniors, but it was more about playing in the spring for them in the end, and they chose to just move on with their careers. We have the 4 guys that are taking advantage of that 6th year, and we'll have guys the next 3 years that will be positioned to be in that 6th year mode, and it's the window will close then for that opportunity. But it is one of the few. There's not much positive that came out of 2020, but for those individuals, it certainly is a positive.
Coaches.
What did you make of RJ's return and being able to come back so quickly from the pretty tough injury?
Yeah, I think him coming back as time kind of went on, this was the game that he kind of marked pretty quickly. So it didn't surprise me that he was able to come back. And then we only played him on offense. He was a valued member of special teams before, but we chose just to play him on offense, and he played well. And I think not only his presence by how he executes, but then the way he goes about his business. He's not a super vocal guy, but he's vocal enough, and I think just him being around, whether it's practice or game night, certainly was a boost for us. And now I think as weeks move forward, we'll get him back on special teams, get on the field a little bit more, and he really showed no ill effects. And he's wearing an elbow brace, but really that didn't slow him up at all.
Coach, it's the Pink Out game coming up this week. What does it mean to you to just represent causes bigger than the team, and if there's anyone in particular that you honor with wearing the pink?
Well, yeah, I think anytime we're on a stage where a lot of people look to us, look to our program to represent different causes like you talk about, and in particular, my mother's a breast cancer survivor, so that one's pretty near and dear to my heart. So yeah, it's a great deal, and hopefully we can get the stadium as packed as we had this time. Just happens to be more in pink than blue and gold. So.
Will your mom be at the game?
Yeah, she will be in town. Yeah.
Going back on the topic of injuries, is James Campbell expected to return this week?
No, but James making really good progress, and I think we crossed our fingers that the bye week would really be the time when he could move forward. He's making the progress I think necessary for that to happen.
And then Zambrano, he went down on Friday.
Yeah, he was back out there today. He got dinged up a little bit, and he's had some lower leg issues that have caused him some short-term pain. I'll say it that way. And he was out there practicing this morning. I think a little treatment on Saturday and Sunday. He'll be fine.
Were you getting sort of nervous about the depth of that position?
Yeah, we lose James, we insert Tyrell back. We don't get James back, and then Eric's down. Miles Jackson had been, a guy I think in spring and fall that was making some real progress, and he was down the first part of the season. Now he's back, so I think it's part of the deal. I think Miles hasn't played any real. He's played some game reps, but not any real action as far as when the game's been in balance. And he would be the next man to go, and he was ready to go. But ideally, a couple weeks down the road, we'll be back to full strength. So we'll see how that goes.
And then Nate, and any other injury updates as well? Nate Stewart.
Yeah, Nate Stewart. He may be much like James. I think. I think he's making progress. Has practiced or has been on the practice field. Easier said than done. I think you can get to the point where you can move around and walk around, but to get out and run and cut, that's a little bit more of a thing to work through. I think in some ways, like Tyrell was out of practice for a couple weeks, but really being game ready took him a couple weeks. I think that Nate will be kind of in that mode while he's practicing. He's not quite there yet. I know Ryan Davis was out there, so we did have Ryan back, and we didn't really suffer anything moving forward from an injury perspective. So again, where we're at, 7 games in, with a bye week in front of us, I think we feel pretty good about where our health is at. That was a physical game, so there was no question. Saturday we were pretty beat up. Pretty good numbers in the training room on Saturday and Sunday. I think the flip of having that Friday game is you do have another game another day to heal up for this week's game, and I thought we had good energy, good spirits, good movement, all those things this morning.
And those 4th down tries, the touchdown late in the game that didn't go, and then you also passed downfield when you had a lead in the 4th quarter. I guess, can you speak to this sort of a pretty aggressive decision?
Yeah, I think the touchdown when we got inside the 1 early in the game, I think we made a good play on 3rd down to get inside the 1. That one goes great. It doesn't go. They're backed up. I think let's go in order. I suppose the pass was the next one. I think what I had suggested is we need to move the ball here. Now, was it a downfield pass or an intermediate pass that would have served us better? Probably an intermediate pass that we caught. And, we kept the clock moving. It didn't happen in that case, but I know we had thrown on a 1st down, I think the series before, a completion of Jaden. So we needed to find a way to stay in the field, and stopping the clock was not ideal in that situation, but we went for it. It didn't work. I think the 4th down, as we, it was maybe a little bit of the offensive coach and me trying to create some momentum for our offense. Up 6, pinning them down, not getting, in hindsight, not getting the 1st down there probably made more sense. And maybe at the same time with how our defense was playing and how our offense was playing, to put it in the defense's hands, pin back. But, I think those situations you want to show confidence in your offense. And unfortunately, it didn't work in that scenario. And we withstood it and we still won the football game. But, certainly for me as a head coach, a decision to learn from. I'll say that at the very least.
And you mentioned suggestions on the pass. Is that something rare, or are you doing that throughout the game to tailor?
No, I think I think in that type of game, it's just you say, hey, we got this lead, but we need to get a 1st down, and to some degree by any means necessary. I think that's a general suggestion. I think as much as anything now. That means throwing it down the field at that point in time, not necessarily, but finding a way to be positive on 1st down and not worry about 2nd and 10. I know in that situation the clock stoppage was the greater issue than the 2nd and 10. I realize that, but I think we still have to be aggressive enough in those situations, trust our guys enough that we need to find a way to move the football. And we weren't very good at that in the 2nd half. Way too many 3-and-outs, and then those are things we have to correct. And if correcting it is give them, a little better sense of freedom to throw the ball on 1st down, I'm all for that.
Coach, last question about the pink out game. How do you feel like for those types of causes, football provides a light or hope to people who are going through a trying time?
Well, that's a good question. I think, a football game, an event rallies so many people of all types, whether that's race, sex, whatever, age. I mean, everything. So I think it's an event where so many people can identify with it. I think, and I look at our football team, and we become such a cross section of society that there's so many different things that have affected our football team collectively. And if you can harness that for good, I think that's a real positive outcome of what sports brings. It's certainly the event on the field, but if you can shine a light on different causes, I do think that's really part of our mission. And this is just one of them.
I know can be a bit of a personal matter, but I'm wondering if you can share even a little bit about what your mother went through.
Well, fortunately it's a long time ago. If I did my math correctly, 23, 24 years ago, I just began coaching. And she was fairly young at the time, and I think it's something that certainly scares you as a family, and it's a hard situation, but she was resilient through it all and has continued to be. And I know she hasn't had any issues for a long time, but it's always something that's you're acutely aware of. So, I think any time that your family's touched by cancer of any form, it's a bad deal. My father-in-law passed away from lung cancer 5-6 years ago. So I think it's it's one of those things. Of all the things that the medical side of our country and everything is figured out, cancer's unfortunately been one that's hasn't necessarily happened completely. I know that the success rates are going up, but not in every case. So, if that answers your question, yes.
Did football provide a light and a positive for your family through those times?
Oh boy, I can't remember. I don't know. I suppose. I think my dad was still coaching at the time. My brother was playing. I was coaching. I suppose it did to some degree, but that was still took a backseat certainly to what she was going through.
Last question for me on the topic, but even though, it was 23, 24 years ago, I'm sure every year is a celebration once you kind of get to that time of the year. How special will it be, this Saturday, having your mom there?
Yeah, I think it's a good thing. It's a bad thing. We don't think about it much because she's had such a good string of health, I guess. But I think, and we've been away. My family's been away from home now for going on 7+ years, and so I think you certainly appreciate it. She just turned 70 this month, so it'll be great to have them. They've been out here quite a bit, so to have them out here this weekend in particular will be pretty special.
One more question about the Weaver game. Just what did they do on that 97-yard opening drive, and how'd you guys kind of adjust to that?
I think the biggest thing there was two things. They were able to take free access passes. I mean, they turned some hitch throws into 15-yard. I think 2 of them. There was a scramble throw in there that was a 20+, and then they got inside the 20 and they hit 2 runs on us that we really didn't fit correctly. It was as simple as that. So what we were able to do is switch up our coverage a little bit to not allow those easy throws, those core easy throws, because I know one was Shadid, right? I think that was the first play of the game. That was maybe even off an RPO, but that was his longest offensive play of the game, was the very first play. And there was a couple more in that drive, and we didn't get into the third down. I think that's pretty telling right there. So whether it was what they had scripted kind of matched up against our defense really worked. We were able to make some adjustments out of that. And I think that's twofold. We took away some of those easy throws and we fit our runs correctly by and large as we went through the game. Credit to our defensive coaches for making adjustments. Credit to our players. I think the one thing that we've shown throughout the season is we don't have a group that panics. Ultimately, teams that win games and win championships are teams that, bad stuff can happen. You find a way through it. You don't panic. You believe in each other. You believe in your coaches, you trust the plan, all that kind of stuff. So I think that was a great thing to see about our defense is, okay, that just happened. Can't change it, but we can change what we're doing moving forward. And I thought our guys really responded well.
Blackfoot Communications is committed to supporting Bozeman businesses. From intelligent network solutions like SD-WAN to fast and reliable fiber-based services, Blackfoot delivers innovative ways for your business to succeed. Blackfoot Communications. Connect to more.
A couple things about this upcoming weekend, Coach. First, Idaho State, one of the charter members of the Big Sky Conference, just like Montana State. So obviously a lot of people that follow Bobcat football, follow Idaho State football. It's sort of a traditional rivalry in the Big Sky Conference. As somebody that's sort of new to this league, how do you sort of compartmentalize that sort of thing when you do have a matchup against an opponent that a lot of people around the state have their eyes on?
Well, I think you look at a map. It's easy to see this is a big game. I mean, outside of the University of Montana, they're our closest rivals, and I know played for a long time as just charter members. I know they, we recruit. They recruit a lot of the same kids. I think it, all that comes into play, and anytime we got a conference folk coming into our stadium, it doesn't matter maybe who it is, but I know the ones that are a little closer, it probably sparks a little bit more interest. So, they've had their ups and downs this year, but I recognize those ups, the win against Davis and the close loss to Sacramento State more than anything. So our guys have to be ready to go.
I know I asked you early on about your evaluation of your coordinator, specifically Freddie Banks, but now that you've had a couple league games, I guess half your league schedule already under your belt, what do you think about Coach Banks and just the confidence he's got that defense playing with?
Yeah, I've been very pleased, and I think the whole staff has really worked well together, and it's it wasn't that simple. None of the guys had worked with each other, with the exception of Coach Daly and Coach Reisinger working together in a different system. So for them to come together and for Freddie to lead, but also be able to listen to the other guys as well, and then for our players to really learn a completely new scheme. I know there was some carryover with some coverage ideas and that type of thing, but generally it's a new way of doing things. And I go back to that first scrimmage we had back in April, and it wasn't very pretty, but we'd set a standard, and our guys, I think, from that point forward, understood exactly what our defensive coaches were looking for. And I know this, the coaches, Coach Banks, to lead it up, have held them to an extremely high standard, whether it's playing with leverage, running the football, being assignment sound. And I know that's showing up on Saturdays, and in this case a Friday. And I think we've been able to make in-game adjustments to some degree in every game that have helped us along. I think our plan has been varied every week, while making the offenses feel like they maybe know what we're doing. We're maybe doing something else, even though it comes from a similar look. So I think the way our guys are playing was my hope and my expectation, but very pleased with where we're at 7 games in.
I know that Idaho State's put a bunch of quarterbacks. That's sort of the story in the league this year, with the exception of your team. I guess there's a couple of guys that have been able to maintain. But, when you do, both Idaho State specific, but also just broadly, when you have a bunch of film with a bunch of different quarterbacks, how does that affect the way you prepare defensively?
Well, I think it's a challenge, and I look back 2 weeks ago to Cal Poly when the two guys that could play were both young, didn't have a lot of film, and were completely different. I think that was really a challenge. And this past week with Barron coming back, and he was different than the guy they played in the interim, and they also played Cooper, I think, was number 8 that they'd come in and run the football with. Challenging, and in part because Barron only had a couple games. It was a game and a half really of film. This situation now, I know Hayes has played the last several games. Coach Tyler Vanderwell was their guy coming in. It appears that Tyler will continue to be out, but we'll have to be ready for his return. And like I said, Hayes, I think, has played pretty well for a young guy out of Cody, Wyoming. He's done all right. So they've instilled some confidence in him, and you can see he's playing beyond, I think, his experience right now.
I know you mentioned after the game on Friday that maybe a deep Weaver stay at their own game. And part of that, when you get a lead in a game like that where it is sort of a test of wills and your defense is playing so well, how do you get back then, though, to being offensive-minded, or I guess being aggressive offensively and really trying to take shots, and then all the stuff that you guys have done so well the first half of the season?
Well, I think you just got to learn from it. Every game does not play out like you hope. I've experienced that over the years. I think you have a plan. You get into a game, whether it's you're a little off, they're a little on. You get in a game like that, and you recognize certainly by halftime that they're going to have a tough time scoring on us. I think all those things come into play, and I think for Taylor, for our offensive staff, it's just to continue to instill confidence in our guys. We have playmakers, and I think that's shown over the long haul this year. And I like to think the long haul represents us more than the 4 quarters in Ogden the other night. But it's still about preparing and having a good plan, and the guys really believing in the plan and executing. And that's what we're tasked to do this week, and find a way to step away from that performance on Friday night.
2 more for me. I know one talking to Rob Tennessee. I know when they first hired Byron Howe, former defensive line coach from Montana State, that they liked his knowledge with the familiarity of the system that they run defensively. So do you see some crossover there? I know Idaho State is running an odd man front primarily, and it seems like maybe they have some similar principles to what you guys used to do defensively. So is there any sort of thing you can take from that in terms of preparation?
Yeah, I think that's fair. And Byron going down there, they are a multiple front team, much like we were here before. I suppose in particular maybe for Coach Armstrong, Coach Potter, there's some things that they can draw. Well, I don't see a direct reflection, I suppose, with what they're doing as a complete whole defensively. There's some things probably that can be pulled out front. I appreciated my opportunities to sit down with Byron. It wasn't that he couldn't coach. It just wasn't going to be a fit for us moving forward. It was more of a completely a systematic decision to make that change. So, happy for Byron that he landed down there, and we'll look forward to seeing him competing against him this weekend.
Well, last thing on that note, as I'm sure you're already realizing, but as you'll continue to coach in the league, there's so many crossovers with guys who used to coach here, used to play there, and there's a lot of Montana State ties to Idaho State. So what do you just think of that dynamic, the fact that there is so many crossovers, especially our coaching staffs within the Big Sky Conference?
Yeah, it's probably the nature of it. Coaching can tend to be regional in your movement sometimes, or at least your comfort level, and this is such a great league, and this part of the country is such a great place to live. I think that's a big part of why coaches choose to, if they're out one door, they choose to open one other in the league, and that's again, it's a testament to the quality of football played in this league, the quality of life in this part of the country, and it does add another element to each one of these matchups for sure.
Thanks, Coach.
Sounds good.
I just had one more question, Coach. Josh Allen played in primetime last weekend and was pretty dominant against Kansas City Chiefs. He plays tonight. A former player of yours. Are you able to follow that kind of stuff? Is that something that you circle on the calendar? Are you able to watch the NFL season this year?
These primetime games are a little easier to at least have on in the background than a Sunday afternoon game. So, yeah, I think with our preparation last Sunday, it was certainly on more in the background, and probably the same could be said for tonight. But, Josh is having and the Bills, they're having a heck of a year so far, and really proud of how he's continued to develop to take on all that he's taken on, and being surrounded by I think an organization that really supported him from day one. All these young quarterbacks aren't blessed with, I think, the same level of belief and support that he got, and he's paid it back, though. He's continued to work and get better. So, really happy for Josh, and we'll have it on in the background tonight. Hopefully they can find another way to win.